Would it be feasible to use gold to fund your retirement? We're going to take a look at that idea, what might trip that up, and what could actually make it work. Now, this is all coming from the layman perspective because if I was a pro, I'd probably be asking for your money. So one popular plan for gold stackers is to use their gold to help finance retirement. Simple plan, you just accumulate until retirement or some point after that, and then you sell it down a little bit at a time. So this would be to cover expenses like some kind of self-managed, reliable Social Security, and we're going to get into that in a minute, but that part is pretty straightforward. Now there's a but coming, but before we get there, we're going to just say that there are a lot of other plans that rely on the same kinds of things. One might be to just hold on to it, never sell, and then hand it down to the next generation. There are estate planning benefits to doing that. Now, it's just one other example that also hinges a little bit on this expectation that gold continues to increase in value or at least hold strong. So that's where we're going to start. Now, we've all seen this chart before. This shows the 50-year performance for gold, silver, the Dow, and the S&P 500. Now, we can see that gold has been performing really well as long as any of us can probably remember. But in the spirit of understanding the context driving these prices, we really need to zero in on this century. And we can see that gold is up 830% since 2000. Gold ran 27% in 2024 alone, outperforming all major asset classes, and it's up again so far this year in January. Now we can see that strong performance, but it doesn't seem to be enough to shake a little bit of doubt on its performance going forward. What goes up must come down. That's always going to be a common perception, but we should probably look beyond that because that's physics. It's not economics. Gravity does not affect price, but the question of price performance is still out there, and it affects any of us looking to hold gold long term, so we need to at least consider likely scenarios, both for the year and for whatever time frame we have leading up to that use case. So let's get a quick shout out to Summit Metals. If you're looking for gold or silver, they have great prices, they have fast shipping, they're definitely worth your time. SummitMetals.com. Kicking this off, one of the big factors affecting gold's recent price run is central bank demand. So the first bit of relevant news here is that China announced another 10-ton gold purchase in December. That's the second consecutive month that China's central bank increased their gold reserves after that 6-month pause. They added 5 tons in November. Now this might seem like a little bit of boring news, but it leads into the bigger picture that we're talking about here. If you're looking for legitimate reasons that gold price might fall, well, you're going to be looking for things like falling central bank demand, and China is a really good one to look at because they've really been leading that charge. And if you want to have some kind of idea on how long they're going to continue leading it, well, China's official gold reserve holdings are 2,280 tons right now. So just compare that to the United States holding 8,134 tons of gold, and you can see that even with that recent buying, they still lag considerably. Even after all their recent buying, China's gold still accounts for only about 5.5% of their total foreign reserves. Now, let me give you some specifics there, but first, don't get that mixed up with Chinese demand or whether or not the Chinese gold ever leaves the country, because we're talking about the country's foreign reserve holdings here, not the population's infatuation with gold. And they have a long way to go, comparatively speaking. Again, if we're looking at foreign reserve holdings, India's gold represents 10% of their foreign reserves. The Bank of England is 14.5%. Russia, 33%. And Germany and the United States are at 74%. 74% versus 5%. So if you looked at the likelihood that China will keep adding gold to its reserves, well, it's easy to agree with analysts saying that they will. You've got State Street Global advisors saying that they expect Chinese central bank buying to persist for the next 14 years. So the general idea that we really had to cover is this expectation that gold value stays strong. So if we're long on it, if we're planning to use it at some point in the future, we want to know what's going to be happening in the next 12 months, what might be happening longer than that. Now, I don't pretend to know any specifics of that future performance, but seeing an analyst mention the likelihood that China continues to buy gold for the next 14 years, well, that's interesting to me in the sense of gold's staying power. Now, gold's going to continue to have value well beyond the next 14 years, but this lines up with the popular question of when to sell and whether it might work for that popular plan of using gold to help fund your retirement. Now, it just so happens that the earliest you can elect Social Security benefits in the United States is at 62, and the maximum monthly benefit at that time would be $2,831, which not coincidentally more or less lines up with the current price of 1 ounce of gold. So if you thought of gold funding your retirement at a level equal to Social Security, well, you would need to have enough to sell 1 ounce of gold per month the rest of your days. That adds up to a lot of gold. If you burn down 12 ounces a year. Now, if you were like 50, like that hypothetical case I threw out, you'd have 12 years to get there, 12 years to stack. Now, most of us were probably not relying on gold to fund that much of our retirement, but if you are, that's what you're working toward. 12 ounces for every remaining good year above ground. Every year above ground is a good one, right? Now, just to slow this down, probably the plan to sell gold to help with retirement is more about supplementing expense or augmenting fun. It's not an all or nothing plan, but just because we're on this topic, let me show you one other scenario because this idea comes up all the time. If you retire at age 62 in 2025, your maximum benefit would be $2,831. I just mentioned that. Well, if you retire at age 70, your maximum benefit would be $5,108. Now, again, these are based on current numbers and continued solvency, but the idea of covering a gap rather than covering the rest of your life actually makes pretty good sense. So if you wanted to replace that $2,831 for that time period, you would need 96 ounces, so 12 times 8. Still a lot of gold, but less than the popular plan if you were to use 1 ounce a month, and it nets you more capital for expenses over the long run. Now, like I said, I just picked one scenario. I'm not a retirement planner, but I was just showing how thinking a little bit more about a popular plan might actually improve that plan. And the other important part here, of course, is that if Social Security does go away, which, look, I'm not suggesting that that's happening, but if it does, you have a plan B. Now, none of this is to say that you need 96 ounces of gold. You might have a similar plan and you want to sell a 1/4 ounce of gold a month or 1 ounce of gold a year. There are a lot of different versions of the same plan. What the plan I just laid out, though, the hypothetical use of 1 ounce of gold per month does is give a real number to a real-world use case. It shows how much gold you would need to equal the maximum Social Security benefit at age 62. Now, look, I feel like I always have to give those kind of caveats to protect feelings, but this is just food for thought. And look, 96 ounces of gold is not a ridiculous amount. It's 8 years, 1 ounce a month. That would equal the maximum Social Security benefit, and it still wouldn't cover the average monthly expense here in the United States. So the question is not, would you possibly need that amount? The question is just, how long do you have to save? So is it realistic? And how big a role do you want gold to play in your retirement? So if your answer is that you want it to play a big role, well, at least here, I hope I drew some attention to the idea that we also need to consider how to use it in retirement. So let's call it good there. Let us know in the comments if you have a plan, if you've considered selling over time, or if you have something else in mind entirely. Let us know. And then while you're in the comments, be sure to hit that like button if you found any of this interesting. Be sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on if you want to hear more on the topic. And if you're still here, thanks again for watching. I always appreciate your time. Take care.